There are some costs which are associated to the adoption of this technology, like any technology, by the way, but it totally makes sense because, you have to go through this initial phase, but at the end of this phase, you have a production that runs more smoothly and you have better parts at the end of the day. This typically happens with automotive parts manufacturers because when you have a small problem on a single part, it can trigger a recall of thousands of units with the cost that the car manufacturer has to sustain. And so that's definitely something to think about. You want to be sure that what you're delivering is going to last and you will not have surprises in the aftermarket because that can generate huge costs. Sometimes you can afford to lose parts because they're not very expensive to make. And so you can afford to throw them away and not to implement a new step. Of course, this completely falls when you have high added value parts, complex parts, which are expensive to make, and even throwing away one or two is going to be really bad for you. We have customers that work for the aerospace and defense industries, and they use our machines to introduce in their production process. Of course, the requirements are different. We want something that is extremely high quality. It needs to be extremely reliable, but the volumes are low. So the solutions for that industries are either batch systems like the Eon or inline systems. It's basically always a cost analysis at the end of the day, especially in manufacturing environments. Keeping the cost down is one of the main goals. And so that's why there is some pain in saying, okay, I have to add a step. So this is going to cost more. I have to ask the operator to also look after this machine. And so that's why there is some pain that you have to go through. And then maybe the first months you just qualifying the machines or just losing time and testing parts. And so when you're trying to implement a new step, you're going to incur into cost. Just by adding a single step, you have the machine cost. So you actually have to physically purchase the system and install it and have it running. But then it incurs in a cost of running the system. This is normally called cost of ownership. So cost is one of the main factor that slows down the adoption of this technology. There are some costs which are associated to the adoption of this technology, like any technology, by the way, but it totally makes sense because, you have to go through this initial phase, but at the end of this phase, you have a production that runs more smoothly and you have better parts. So this is typically what's normally stopping people. It's cost and probably not knowing the benefits of this technology and what it could solve in the subsequent steps, like people not knowing this technology in particular and the benefits that it has and the cost adoption. There is some friction there because you have to spend money, you have to find good suppliers, you need to qualify the system, be sure it matches what they promise and everything. So there is some pain in the adoption, but the gain that you get after, it justifies it. I think that maintaining the trust that your customers have in the parts that you deliver is really, really important. Should we keep this manufacturing partner, this supplier, or should we move to somebody which is more reliable, more trustworthy?